Mindset Athlete podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. I'm a two-time Paralympian and owner of James Robert Fitness, which is an online training, nutrition and mindset coaching business. First of all, I'd like to thank Lauren Williams for suggesting this quote to the show. An athlete is a mindset. It's how you prepare, think and execute. Not because of some elite status or physical stature. Anybody can be an athlete. By Chris Harth. And each week on the Mindset Athlete, we like to bring you inspirational athletes, a message, or experts talking about human optimization to teach you how to change your perception of your mindset and become 1% better. And on today's show, I've got Matt Miscannon. Matt is a high school French teacher who also works as a semi-professional soccer referee in the US, all levels under the first division in the MLS. He's married with two boys. One is 2.5 years old and one 6 months old. And he's passionate all about sport and enjoys all forms of exercise. So, Matt, welcome onto the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Obviously, I'll start this introduction slightly differently to some of the episodes in the past because you and I have known each other, since I knew you as probably a preteen. Because our family, to give some context to the listeners, both our families were stationed on the same military base, say roughly 20 years ago.
Yeah, roughly. Actually, going on 25 years ago now.
Okay.
I believe we got over there in 1995, and then we stayed 4 years. So we returned back to the States in '99. So yeah, a little bit more than 20 years now, which is crazy to think about how much time has gone. Since that time.
It's a long time, and obviously. To put a little bit more of a anecdote on that, obviously I went it was in the same grade as your sister, so
right.
I knew your older brother as well because obviously we were talking about soccer, but our families did 10-pin bowling.
Absolutely.
Back in the day, and that's one of the, I think off the top of my head, would have been one of the sports I ever did competitively before I went on to my trajectory that obviously.
Right.
Most people listening to the show know. If you don't, obviously, I went on to, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but obviously represent my country at a high level of the Paralympics. But did I know 25 years ago that would have been the case? Obviously, you and I both, probably your brother and sister, had aspirations coming from very sporty families to want to do very well in sport.
Absolutely.
But to say that I ever envisioned doing that, it's probably a dream or
sure
fantasy, but not a reality. So to be able to live the childhood ambitions is probably a good one. So, but obviously coming back to you, Matt, how did you transition from obviously doing 10-pin bowling to then go on and to go from obviously playing the sport to then going on to referee in from that instance?
So it was quite interesting for me getting into bowling. That was something that we did when we were in Belgium, and we had a lot of fun with that. It's something I actually continued for a fair amount of time through high school. In the States, they have actually high school bowling teams. So that's something we were able to be competitive with. And I was always participating in soccer as well. But for me, I enjoyed both aspects. The bowling aspect and the soccer aspect. So I continued to play soccer through my teenage years, and something that my dad started to do with my brother. My brother's 2 years older than me. They got into refereeing soccer as something to do on the weekends away from my brother to earn some extra money, things like that. So I saw what they were doing with that. It was something that interested me as well. The opportunity to earn some money being around the game. Not being confined, to certain retail or restaurant types of jobs. During high school, I had friends that were doing these types of jobs where they weren't making a lot of money and they weren't enjoying it. So the opportunity to get involved with the sport on a different level, to be able to go out there and see a whole different aspect of the game, one that I had never even thought to be part of. As a player, you always are complaining about the referees. You're always looking at the referees and making judgments about them. Oh, you didn't see the right decision. You made a bad call. You're not fit enough. This and that. For me to go out there and do that, it was something really at the beginning, just as a way to earn a little bit of extra money. and still be around the game. So that's kind of how it started. And then it just kind of, progressed from there. But it was really, really a cool thing. It's shaped a big part of my life ever since then. So.
Do you think it's changed your perspective on the game? Because going from the player as to, and I think every sport can attest to themselves, and they need to put their hand up and say and look in the mirror because this is true. They obviously look pointing the finger a lot of the time, and obviously the referee and the assistants are only human. They are going to miss things, and I think
Sure.
this is what later on in my sporting career, when a basketball referee kind of changed the script on me and said, obviously I make mistakes. Do you make mistakes in a game? And I think it's a great point to look at, because no player, how good or how or whatever level they play at, is never going to make a mistake in a game, because it's like, well, okay, there's the other side of it. Obviously, coming back to my point in terms of, do you think it's obviously changed your perspective on obviously being the man in the middle and being in charge of 22 players?
Sure. No, absolutely. It's something that when you really think about it, everybody watches the game if you're playing, you're playing, you have the competitive edge. You only see things one way. As a supporter, as a fan, you're rooting for one team. You're only seeing things one way. Even if you understand the laws of the game and you understand the decisions to be made, you're still frustrated, you're still animated, you're still, you don't want the referee to make that decision regardless of if you even if it's the correct decision. So for me, being the referee, it absolutely changed my perspective, because, when I first started my first few years, it was nothing, very serious. It wasn't until I went to college, I actually got in with some guys that were doing it at a higher level, that were doing it at a semi-professional level, that were meeting regularly, once a week or once every couple of weeks, to analyze video clips, to talk about certain situations, to really delve deep into the laws and understand why the referee was making a certain decision, to talk about things like positioning, to talk about, things like man management and things like that, where you could really like look at it as a skill and an art form, rather than just somebody out there blowing the whistle, throwing yellow cards, throwing red cards, running around, doing things like that. There's so much more that goes into it that, I think the average spectator doesn't realize. It's a craft, and a lot of these guys that are doing it at the highest level have been working on that craft the same as an athlete, the same as the players. They're training, during the week, several hours each day, same as a player, whether it's fitness training, whether it's, reviewing laws, whether it's watching video clips, looking at different situations, meeting with other referees to discuss situations and kind of bounce ideas. What other options could the referee have had? What else? So when you really start to look behind the scenes at what a referee does. Now, naturally, at the youth level, are all of these referees taking this time? Not so much. No. So you have to separate, kind of the groups, but it's just like athletes as well. Once you become more invested in it, you can really see, what goes into it to be good at it. And the more that you learn about it, the better you want to be. So I think it certainly definitely changed my perspective in that respect. I had, and do now have a much greater respect for the guys that are at the top level, that are doing this, the sacrifices that they've made to get there, the same as the players, because, it's something that I think, people support the players when they make the mistakes. Do they support the referees when they make the mistakes? Maybe not so much. But understanding that the same way, like you were saying, to your point about, to criticize a referee, well, has the player not made a bad pass? Has he not, taken a bad shot, at any point in the match, probably multiple times in the match? So, naturally the referees, they're not going to get it right all the time. But they do the best they can. They're showing up to a game, thinking, I'm going to give it my best effort. I'm going to try and get all of these calls right. Does it happen? No, but of course we're not robots. We're not perfect. So, definitely the perspective changes a lot as you have a chance to really see what goes into being successful at a higher level with that.
So Matt, let's talk on that point then. Let's talk about obviously the sacrifices that you as a referee have to make, because obviously people will only see one side of the argument, like you say, in terms of the team that they support, and that's it.
Sure.
What's some of the sacrifices that you've had to deal with down the years?
So for me personally, I would say that I'm largely blessed in the sense that, I haven't missed a lot of family time. A lot of the commitments that I have, they've been, I've been fortunate that they've been around other important events with my family life. Um, However, small sacrifices on the weekly, in terms of training. So a lot of people don't know that referees are required to pass a fitness test at minimum once a year to maintain their level. But the guys that are at the highest level are taking fitness tests sometimes once a month, or once every other month. So the training that goes into it is intense training. Referees at the highest level are training, you know, 3, 4, 5 days a week, for varying amounts of time. But the time that you have to set aside for your training is obviously time away from your family. The time that you're traveling to a game, so for me, most of my games are within the state of Florida. But for me, I could have to travel down to Miami. For me, that's a 4-hour drive. I could have to travel to Tampa. That's a 2-hour drive. So, for me you know, to leave in the morning, go down, to do a game, to come back, I'm missing essentially the whole day. And sometimes, the games are being played when other events are going on. Life doesn't stop for a soccer match naturally. So there's been moments where I've had to kind of make a decision, do I do this game, or do I participate in this family event? That could be a birthday, that could be an anniversary, that could be a family get together, different events like that. Other kinds of small events. So it could be the day-to-day small sacrifice, a couple hours, with the wife, or a couple hours out training or watching video clips or things like that. A Saturday spent driving to do a game, doing the game and coming back is a Saturday, not spent with the family, or doing different things like that. So those are sacrifices that you make, because you want to be part of it. You're invested in the game, and it's something that you make the choice. And a lot of referees, I have to say this, is you have to have the good support system. So if you talk to any referee at the higher level, um, it's impossible to do this if you don't have, a support system, friends, family that are encouraging you, that are saying, that they're not, making you feel guilty for missing any kind of an event as a result of your commitment. They understand that it's kind of it's a job, but for a lot of people, it's more of a calling as well. You feel, like this is something that you're passionate about, and just like, anything else, without the referees, the game doesn't exist.
Hmm.
So you feel kind of a sense of obligation. You want to go out there and give these guys, the best possible game. So you have understanding people around you. It certainly helps in those situations.
So this next question, I'm going to come at it from two perspectives now, because obviously the current climate, as you saying, nothing comes before sport. Obviously, with
Right.
us now in what is a pandemic, where does that put, be it the supporters, the players, the referees? What kind of
So
your perspective?
yeah, sure. It's very interesting because, I would have never imagined a situation where essentially the entire sporting world is shut down, right? In our lifetime, in our parents' lifetime, can we really imagine a situation where something like this happened? So I think it's great that the seriousness of what's going on trumps, the seriousness, or the what people invest in sport. I think people understand that there's something much more important at stake than, a basketball game, a soccer game, any kind of sporting event that's going on. So I think that's important. I think, sport is such a great outlet for a lot of people, from their daily lives, so I think it's a fine balance, because you have a lot of people now maybe that are struggling for ways to divert their attention, to kind of get their mind off of maybe their daily struggles. A lot of people, struggling with their jobs now, things, of that nature, maybe family issues. So you don't have the distractions of sports, which is sometimes nice to take away a lot of people's attention from that, even if momentarily, to watch a 90-minute match. Well, that's 90 minutes where you get to root for your team, whereas maybe, you're not thinking about whatever other problems you might have. So, I think the perspective has to be that, you have to take care of people first. That's the most important thing. But I think a lot of people out there are very eager to get back to that state of normal, to watch their weekly matches, to participate in their weekly matches, and to get back to training. I'm sure the players, for the most part, are finding ways to maintain their training. I know that, as a referee and in the referee community, I know that a lot of the guys are still, they're training, they're doing as much as they can. Fortunately in the States, we're not officially on a total, lockdown. So, there's, a lot of people that are making use of the local parks, to go out and train a little bit and things like that. But you just do the best you can, as much as you can. So
I'll put the word "yet" in that, because obviously when this comes out, you might be on. I shouldn't laugh about it, but you may be on a lockdown
right,
by when the time this comes around.
right, yeah. So yeah, no, go ahead, yeah.
So from that perspective, then obviously when we do come back to normality, do you think it gives a better sense? And this is my judgment call now, because I don't see it changing, because you're seeing hysteria and people's actions. But if people were to somehow make a 160-degree turn in terms of their behavior
Right.
and their attitude to other people, do you think your profession will get a better overall enjoyment out of the sport? I don't see it happening,
So
but I'm being a little
yeah,
bit more
yeah.
positive with it.
Yeah, I think, it's funny. I think, when there's things like this that happen, people have a way of coming together, supporting each other more. But as in the past, when we've seen different, catastrophes, whether natural disasters or terrorist events or things like that, where people have come together, in the end, when it returns back to a state of normalcy, I think you see people kind of revert to how they were. I think, there's always going to be a certain passion with sports, and I don't know if you attribute to a chemical makeup, the competitive nature of an athlete, or what you want to attribute it to. I don't think these events will, the next time I get on the field, all of a sudden all the players are going to say, "Oh, great job, referee. Oh, you've done really well today." I think there'll still be, that competitive nature will still come out. That fire will come out again, and they'll question me. They'll challenge me, on different situations, and that's almost to be expected. And for what it's worth, it's almost a little bit of the rush of refereeing, to have that sense of, that these players, they want it so badly, that they're going to challenge you, and so you want to make sure that you're doing the best you can, and that you're on your game for them. So, but in terms of, them being nicer to us, in terms of the fans appreciating us, I don't expect that to change too much. I think once we get back to it, it'll be the same guys, asking for calls, or telling us we're blind, or things like that. Yeah. So.
And do you think from that basis then, Matt, that your performance as a refereeing staff, it doesn't matter if you're a referee or one of the assistants,
Sure.
you're over critiqued at times, because obviously the management or the managerial coaches are going to kind of look, well, the result's not gone our way because of you, as opposed to blaming it their players at times?
Sure. Well, there's always the discussion amongst referees, when a coach will come and say that your decision cost you the game, and amongst referees, the natural inclination is to say, well, surely it's not the 5 shots that your forward missed, or the bad crosses, or your lack of tactical instruction to whatever. it's not any of those reasons. It's surely the one decision that we made that had the great outcome on the game. But as a referee, you kind of accept that that's the way it's going to be. Is it right? Perhaps not. There's people that are going to say that it's not right. That's not the way it should be. And you always hope that that people will understand or accept kind of the responsibility, for themselves. But I think human nature dictates, and you see it, in different aspects of life. It's always easier to blame other people than it is to blame yourself. And so as a referee, you understand that criticism is part of it, that there's always going to be people that'll feel that you're accountable for the results. And you can't really do a lot to change that, in the sense of, except going out and doing your best. Now, there's a lot more transparency across all levels of sport, in the sense of, now a lot of this, especially with soccer, the VAR, which is, well, of course in England. Well, let's not talk about England, because that's something. Well, as a referee, a lot of people have some discrepancies with how it's being done in the Premier League. But by and large, I'll say, it's changing it. If not always for the better, there's at least a bit more transparency to kind of see, okay, what are the referees thinking about when they're making these decisions? And there's more education being put out there. So while the fishbowl becomes smaller, I would say, as a result of, the instant replay, I think there's a lot more education as well, for the common fan to understand more of the decisions that are being made. And I think overall that helps, how people look at what referees do, even if they don't always agree with it, because, you can have certain situations and, unfortunately, because of the way that the laws are in soccer, particularly, you have some situations where you might get, 100 of the best referees in the world, and 50 of them will say, well, it should go this way, and 50 of them will say it should go this way. There's not always that black and white. Of course, there's the gray area. There are judgment decisions. So, you always hope that, as technology becomes more prevalent in the game or in sport in general, that it allows people to become more educated. It gives them more of an insight, on, what's going on. And even if they don't always agree, at least they understand it a little bit better.
Do you think then, obviously you brought it up, Matt, with the VAR being in the Premier League?
Yeah.
Do you think the referees in this country has used it as an excuse then to not have to make that judgment call at times? I'm not gonna throw all of them under the bus, but some when you do watch, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go to my fourth official for him to make the decision based on making the human call that's on the field.
So my perspective on the VAR, and obviously different people are going to have different perspectives on it. My perspective is that, it should be, you shouldn't have somebody who's not on the field making the final decision, which is what has happened a little bit, in England with their VAR. It's been more of a situation where whoever is the VAR is making a final decision with certain match critical decisions. And I think whereas other countries have allowed the referee to review an on-field monitor and then they make the final decision, so for example, the referees in the United States, they when they have the VAR essentially is there to recommend a review if they feel that the referee has made a clear and obvious error. So it's then at that point for the referee to go to an on-field monitor to look at the different replays and then make a final decision. But it's the referee on the field who makes the final decision, not so much the VAR who's not, there on the field. So I think in my opinion, where England has kind of, gone astray with the process of VAR is kind of taking the decision out of the hands of the referee who's on the field. I think when you're the referee on the field, you want to be able to make that decision for yourself. You're the one who has the best feel for the match, and I think that's where it's gone a little bit astray with England's use of the VAR.
Do you think then, from that point then, do you think this, I won't call it an over-reliance on artificial intelligence, but do you
Right.
think it puts more onus on you, the referee, to be very overcritical of your performance after the fact?
Well, I would say that the best referees are overcritical of their performance anyways. I think, we're taught to self-evaluate. I think you have to be honest with yourself. That's one of the things that they teach you as you progress up the ranks. They really want you to be able to go back and watch your match and really identify moments where you could improve and decisions that you could have done better or alternate decisions. What other options did you have besides that decision that could have yielded maybe a better result later on in the match? So I would say, does VAR make you overly critical? I don't think it makes you overly critical as a referee. I think it really gives maybe the outsider an opportunity to be more critical because now there's people that say, well, if you're still getting it wrong with the technology, then there's a problem. And part of the problem also is not so much that the referee is getting it wrong or that the VAR is getting it wrong, is people's understanding of the interpretations of the laws. And unfortunately, sometimes that comes down to a broadcaster who is interpreting a law maybe incorrectly and influencing public opinion. Whereas, if you're a referee, you can look at it and you can say, this is being done correct. This is being interpreted correctly. But even amongst the referee community, oftentimes when they make changes to the laws or they vary the interpretations, and lately, probably the biggest example I can give is with the handball, which has been a big cause of controversy. The interpretations have changed with the laws over the last 4 or 5 years. They've changed it to seemingly make it easier, but maybe in some cases also making it more difficult for the average fan to understand what constitutes a handball, what doesn't constitute a handball. And then, of course, the other decision is the offside. And, the offside, when you freeze frame it, there's been a lot of decisions like that have come under fire. And there's obviously a lot of people that will argue, the frames per second and, a shoulder versus a hand versus a foot versus a head versus a neck and all these different things. And are you so minutely analyzing a play in a game that happens so fast? Are we losing a little bit the integrity of the match at the risk of having it so perfect? It's quite an interesting argument. But in terms of, back to your original question, does it make the referee more critical? I don't think so in that sense, no.
So you raise a good point there, Matt, in terms of the handball.
Right.
Be it obviously is going to go from game to game.
Sure.
Obviously for the referee and the players, isn't it sometimes difficult, the consensus of the rule, be it, I think, 6 feet, it's sometimes not a handball.
Right.
How
So
are you supposed to get out the way of the ball if somebody kicks the ball?
so
I'm talking deliberately sometimes.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, and without like going, largely in depth into like specifics of the law and stuff like that, you have certain situations where now, and this is what's hard to understand, is what's viewed as a handball for an attacking player is not necessarily viewed as a handball for a defending player. Because one of the shifts of the focus is that they don't want any goal or an attacking play to be started as a result of handball, whether intentional or not. So then that's something that maybe some people don't know, because now at this point, if the ball touches an attacker's hand accidentally or on purpose, that leads to a goal scoring opportunity or to a goal, we're instructed to call that. With a defender, it's a little bit different. Now it's about where the defender's hand is. We talk about, does the defender make themselves bigger? Is their hand in a natural position? Have they, put themselves in a position where they know they're going to take away space from the attacking player by putting their hand there. So there's different criteria that you have to really consider, and it's all at a split second. Now with the VAR, we have a chance to go back and look at it. But on the field, when it's all the different criteria that you're running through your head, and you have to try and make the decision. Okay, was the defender in a natural playing position? And you have to evaluate, a stance, a player stance when they're running. Sometimes their hand is away from their body, but was it a natural position for what they were doing? When a player jumps, right, to make a header, they jump, they use their arms for balance, right? So their arm is naturally up and away from their body, right? So does that become a natural position, right? So you have to kind of like evaluate these different things. Some people might say, well, their arm is away from their body, so they're making themselves bigger. That's true. But is their arm in a natural playing position for what they're doing at that moment in time? It's a lot of different criteria. People don't always consider the different elements that go into it. And that's where it kind of gets a little bit fuzzy in that respect.
Do you think that one's a slightly more clear-cut one than obviously the one with offsides, because making it that much of you could go like completely going away from traditionalism, and obviously no person other than a robot is going to be able to see that instance of a microsecond difference.
Right. Yeah, I think with the offside, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, the offside, I think, is the one that's the most clear cut in the sense that, like, if you assume that the video is exactly correct, that they're able to freeze at the exact moment the ball is played, and they're able to, match up with their lines exactly where everybody's positioned. If you assume that all this, according to the technology, is correct, then it's very simple. If, a player, is beyond the second to last defender with any part of the body that's eligible to play the ball, then they're offside, and there's, whether it's a toe, whether it's as much as a toe, or, or 10 yards, it doesn't really matter in that respect. Offside is offside. Now, there's people that'll look at it and say, well, that kind of takes away the spirit of the game, because for so many years we've played this on the judgment of the assistant referee to make that decision, and now you're putting it to such a fine freeze frame, and you're saying somebody that maybe, even as much as 3 or 4 years ago, before VAR even became a thing, would be seemingly in line with the defender, and have an attacking opportunity, is now being called offsides by as much as a toe, or half of a hand, or a shoulder, or something like that. So I think that frustrates people a little bit, that the game has been brought to this level, at the sake of what? The accuracy of the decisions, the money that goes into it, all that. It's all a big part of it. So different aspects, obviously. But I think, unfortunately, because so much goes into it, because of the financial investment by everybody, the fans who invest, the teams, the owners, everything that goes into sports at this point, you want to do as much as you can to get the call right, even at the risk of, taking away a little bit the spirit of the game.
So would you say, obviously it's a difficult question to answer, but is it on the players themselves, be it midfielders, you name it, whatever position they play, to adapt and obviously master the rules in terms of to being able to maximize where the game is going, in terms of being able to have that timing that is like, boom, it's, yes, you need to take a little edge off, but be able to produce that
absolutely.
result.
I think it's always incumbent upon the players to adapt. I think, as the game evolves, they have to also evolve. And I know that teams are now hiring consultants, to come in and really, like, essentially coach the players on laws of the game and how the laws of the game are changing, so that they can understand what they can do, and what they can't do, and how they can really push the envelope, for the max possible advantage. And the players, you see them now, they really they live on the edge, and you're never going to create a situation where the players are not going to be offside, because at the end of it, things like that is the attacking player. They're conditioned, they're trained to be right there on the edge, and hope that they've timed it correctly, hope that they've made that run perfectly in line, even at the risk of it being called back. uh, I think because that advantage of being right there gives them that chance, to put themselves in the best position. I think they're always going to push the boundaries in that respect. I don't foresee a situation where, like, you would see an attacking player that would purposely stay off of their line a couple yards intentionally and have to try and make up that ground. They're always going to be right on the edge, and if they get it, they get it, and if they don't, well, then they reset and they try again. But I think definitely it's on the players and the teams to try and coach the players in how the game is evolving to prepare them for success.
And now, obviously, with you being a French teacher now, I'm going to go slightly
Yeah.
off on a tangent a little
Sure.
bit.
Yeah.
Do you think the language, well, it's not really a barrier, the language that you've been able to acquire, be it French, English, and be it where you live in the United States, is very
Right.
Hispanic.
Sure.
Do you think that's been beneficial to your refereeing career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. For me, and I don't know if you remember, but my mom is actually Colombian. So I do speak Spanish, pretty well, in addition to English and to French. And there's a huge Hispanic community here, so the ability to speak multiple languages on the field absolutely plays a part. As a referee, a lot of what you have to do, naturally your decisions matter, but a lot of what you do as a successful referee is making sure that you're able to sell your decisions. Because you could have a correct decision. If the players disagree with it, you have to be able to convince them that it's the correct decision. You have to be able to get them on your side to sell. And the ability to communicate with them in their native language is going to help you a lot of times to manage them, and to help kind of create a rapport with the players. I think that's the biggest thing. Something that you'll hear referees say a lot is the rapport with the players. And when you watch referees, the guys that do it the best, you'll see in some in one frame they could be yelling at a player, and then in the next frame they're laughing with a player. And that ability to have that relationship on the field is huge to the success of a referee. And if you're not able to communicate with the players, then obviously that makes it more challenging. For me, the ability to speak multiple languages has absolutely played a huge part for me in my success. Absolutely.
And has it helped you further to be able to progress, be it to I think I seen a picture of you, been a while back now, of you being able to do that, and I think it was an international tournament. Has been having those additional language been beneficial towards that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things, referees are evaluated on a lot of different levels, and I think, like anything else, and it's one of the things I try and tell my students is you want to make yourself more marketable in any aspect of life. And I always try and encourage them, that their study of language, can really make them more marketable in any field that they want to get into. So for me as a referee, uh for in terms of opportunities that are given to me, I think that's one aspect that definitely helps me in that respect. The ability to be able to speak the three languages, to manage different games. So we have, naturally, teams that might come to participate in international events from South America. We have teams that are coming from Canada at times, as well. So to be able to participate in those matches, it certainly gives me a little bit of an advantage. Now, you could speak 20 languages, and if you're not any good on the field, you're not going to get any of those games. So it's one piece of the puzzle, but it's a piece nonetheless, right? If you're trying to complete the puzzle, all the pieces matter, and that's one of them that certainly helps as well. Sure.
And do you think your immersion in Europe has helped, obviously, further your soccer career, both as a player and as a match official, because of obviously the standard that is probably associated from your neck of the woods to European sport?
Sure. I think my time in Europe was hugely impactful and influential to me in a lot of different aspects of my life. I would say as it relates to soccer and becoming a referee, being in Europe, and seeing the passion that exists for soccer. It's not one that always existed in America, and the sport continues to grow here. Every year the sport is getting bigger and bigger, but the passion that Europeans have for the sport is unrivaled. I think maybe with South Americans might be the comparison, but in terms of the U.S. for soccer, that passion always hasn't always existed in the same way. So being over there, being immersed and seeing the passion that exists for the sport, understanding a little bit, uh, it has certainly helped me, transition over here, as the game has grown here, as a referee, to really understand, all that goes into it. I think it's certainly, been a valuable tool to me to understand more of how important this stuff is for all of those who are involved.
And my penultimate question to you then, Matt, before we wrap up the show then, if you had to referee, doesn't matter be in the center circle or be on the touch line, who would you want to referee, dead or alive?
Oh boy. Huh, that's a question and a half, huh? Um, you know, for me, I think I'd have to probably go to present time. I think one of the coolest matches to referee would be, and this would go back a couple years, the Clasico, Madrid and Barcelona. When you have, two of what I would consider the game's all-time greats in Ronaldo and Messi, playing, together on the same match, on the same pitch. I feel like that would be one of the, kind of the iconic games to be able to referee. I think, the atmosphere in either stadium, whether it was in Madrid, whether it's in Barcelona, I think that would be a game of all games. I think it would be one of those experiences that you would never forget about. I think that would be very, very cool. Yeah.
And my final question before we wrap up the show is, if you had to summarize what we've been speaking about into one sentence for people to take away, what would that be?
So I guess to summarize, it is, I think we could say, the opportunities, that exist through sport, are not always the most obvious ones. I think, we talked about at the very beginning, we said, our paths, were not ones that we might have ever thought of, when we were young kids, uh, but they have both been paths in sport that have, led us to a lot of great moments in our lives, I would say. A lot of great relationships that we've built, a lot of great memories that we have, a lot of great opportunities to see and do different things. So I would say, you know, you know, you the summary, I guess, is always, look at sport as a great opportunity to see and do a lot of different things in your life, and take it for everything that you can get from it, because I think in so many different ways it can provide great opportunities and great moments in your life.
So once again, Matt, thanks again for coming on the Mindset Athlete podcast.
Absolutely. No, thank you for having me. It was a great honor, a great pleasure to be here.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. If you like this episode, please do share it with your friends, and do let Matt and I know what you thought of the episode by tagging me on Instagram at James O Roberts 11, and again you can do the same on Twitter and Facebook. And if you had any additional questions, don't hesitate to shoot them over as well. And finally, don't forget to check out my free content at fitamputee.co.uk and click on the tab resources. But not forgetting, I've also started a new Facebook group, especially for the podcast, which you can find by typing in The Mindset Athlete. And also not forgetting, and one especially for the amputees listening to this podcast, I have recently created a Facebook group called The Amputee Coach, Fitness and Nutrition for Amputees to help you lose 10 to 30 pounds. So make sure to check out the links. They will be in the description. You can find all the show notes at mindsetgame.lipson.com under the category General. So once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of the Mindset Athlete Podcast.